Hi, welcome back to my channel. I'm Dr. Jamie Barney, a clinical psychologist who for the past 15 years has been helping people create deep and lasting change. And on this channel, I share some of what I've learned along the way. In today's video, I'm going to be sharing around the topic of can people change? Let's dive in. Recently, a friend asked me if people can change. And the context behind this and the question behind the question was around whether or not he should end a long-standing friendship. And so his experience of the friendship was that it was very one-sided, that he was constantly walking on eggshells, and there was really no room for him in the friendship. This was further complicated by his friend's diagnosis of complex PTSD from significant abuse that she had sustained in her childhood years. He found that the same behavioral patterns would play out again and again over the course of years. And he had, on several occasions, raised some of his concerns with his friend, and for a while things did change, but it never lasted. So, first of all, I wouldn't do what I do if I didn't believe that people could change, and if I hadn't seen for myself transformative change. The fact is, people can and do change, but not everyone does. So why is that so? I think there's a few key ingredients, and the first is having some level of insight or awareness into the nature of the problem or the thing that requires some level of change. How do you change something that you have no awareness of? I really don't think you can. We know that repression and denial can be incredibly powerful forces. In psychodynamic therapy and other related therapies, one of the staple interventions is to point out defenses so that people can see what they could have previously. I had a session with a client who had a tendency to laugh anytime that she would bring up something emotional. And she said to me, I had no idea I was even doing that until he pointed it out to me. And a few minutes later, the same thing happened. And she identified it herself that time and said, I'm doing that thing again, aren't I? All of us have defenses and patterns of conditioning, ways that we relate to ourselves and others that we're not always aware of. It can take a while to build up enough awareness as to how our histories have shaped us and continue to influence us in day-to-day life. Freud talked about the importance of differentiating between intellectual and emotional insight. People may have an awareness at an intellectual or rational level as to some problematic behavior or way of coping, but that in and of itself is not always enough to lead to lasting change. Years ago, I had a client with type 1 diabetes who was taking her insulin really haphazardly. Now, this person had a medical background and knew far better than I everything that could happen and would happen should she continue to take her medication infrequently. People may know something at an intellectual or a rational level, but it may not go down deep enough to address the underlying emotions. That's why just challenging thoughts in and of itself is not always helpful. If anyone has ever heard someone say, well, I know that, but I just can't help but feel this way, you will understand. It's really our emotions which are often the catalyst for change, and without them, it's hard for lasting change to occur. I think the next requirement for change is having a motivation or desire to change. Change is inherently difficult. It's tough, and without an underlying motivation or reason to change, we can quickly become stuck and revert to what we've always known. I had a client who had a decades-long spending addiction, and he said to me, I really should stop overspending because otherwise I'm not going to have any money in retirement. And should often comes from a place of motivation or obligation, which is typically not enough to bring people over the line, at least not in any long-term sustained way. A should doesn't really contain a lot of motivation, and it's often not a compelling enough reason for people to make difficult changes. Sometimes people are very clear about not wanting to change. A client's family member once said, I don't want to change, I'm too old. Someone else once said, well, that's just the way I am. Other times people will say all the right things, but they don't follow through. Their words and their actions do not line up. Often a person's behaviors is a better indicator of their level of awareness and their willingness to change something that may be hurting themselves or those around them. People may say something to appease someone else, to avoid a difficult conversation, to get someone off the back, or not deal with the situation. People can lie, be deceitful, say all kinds of things, maybe with no real intent of things changing. But the difficulty is that we can't ever truly know a person's true intent, but we can pick up clues from their behavior. To summarize, yes, people can change, but change takes time. It's rarely linear, it's seldom easy, and there's likely to be regressions along the way. All of us can feel compelled to keep things in a predictable way and to revert back to what feels familiar and to what we know. There's a sense of safety within that, even if that sense of familiarity is dysfunctional and can hurt those around us. I think there's a few essential ingredients in order for people to make deep, long-lasting change. The first of which is a level of emotional awareness, not just intellectual, into the nature of the problem. And secondly, a desire that overrides all the defenses that want things to stay the same. Thanks for watching. If you'd like more insight into the world of mental health, be sure to subscribe and click the bell notification.